Welcome back to another episode of the Unsportsmanlike Podcast. I am your host, Tamarcus, and today I have a very special guest, the one and only Hayes Fawcett.
Tamarcus, how's it going, bro? I appreciate you having me on the pod. Happy to be here, man. Looking forward to this conversation.
Man, I'm definitely excited to have you here, man. It took a while to get you here, but we're finally here, man. So I'm very grateful for for you taking some time out of your day. But let's hop right into it. So Hayes, my first question would be, how did you get started with what you're doing?
Man, I get this question a lot, and it's one that I really have to, take a step back on and kind of really reflect on how I got to where I am today. And it really centers around one thing, man. My love for sports, right? Growing up, played three sports. At the house, we always had games on. Like the town I grew up in, big sports town, pretty good high school programs. So growing up, I was just kind of always in the environment of sports, and it's just something I naturally, gravitated to, right?
Hmm.
Well, anyway, I one day I was on Instagram, man, and I saw like a really cool like photo edit, and I was like, man, this is pretty cool. I kind of want to give this a shot. So anyway, I started messing around on my phone, making these graphics for like professional players, just for fun on the side. Like I thought it was a cool little hobby to have. Um, well, anyway, as time went on, a few of the graphics that I had made for these professionals, the pros like noticed them and like reposted them and all this good stuff. And man, when I saw that, it was like such a surreal feeling for me. Like I was really starstruck, all that good stuff. So as kept going on, I kept like trying to recreate that same thing happening. But obviously with professional athletes, it's it's pretty hard to get in contact with them and for them to
Yeah,
see it
for
not only
sure.
because of their busy schedule, but a lot of them have big followings. So I started to think, man, I was like, look, if I'm not having good luck reaching out these with these pros, let's start back with high school players because a lot of these guys one day are going to end up in the pros. It'll be cool to kind of be a part of that journey
Right.
early on. So yeah, man, that's pretty much what I did. I started making high school graphics and I stayed consistent with it, and over time. Um, it eventually kind of became what it is today.
So who was that first player, from the high school standpoint? Because I know you're from the state of Louisiana, correct?
Yes, yes.
Who was that first player? And I kind of already know who you're going to say that
Hmm.
basically kind of helped you take off, like that one that just believed in you. Because I feel like with what we do nowadays, we all need that one player to believe in us. And who was that? Who was that one player that gave you a chance?
For sure, for sure. That's a great question. I'll kind of give a little backstory to that to answer that question. So, kind of going back to the original question that you asked, like how I got started. When I started making them for these high school guys, at the time I was like fifth or sixth grade, and I was making them for like players at my local high school. We had a really good program, made it to the state championship like
Mm-hmm.
3 years in a row. So I started doing those for players at the local high school. Like it was pretty cool for me, right? Well, anyway, as I started posting them, they would like repost it, and then I started noticing, hey, look, not only are the high school players at my school like reaching out, it's starting to get more local. Went from my school to Southwest Louisiana to Northwest Louisiana to just all over the state. Well, that year there was a five-star running back that went to Catholic high school by the name of Darius
Yeah.
Geis. He was committed to LSU, and he was one of the guys really that like showed a lot of love. Posted a lot of the graphics I made for him throughout his whole senior season. And I've told you this story before too, but really the big moment there was he got to the Army All American game. And for those listening, if you don't know what the Army All American game is, it's one of the games where they select the nation's top high school recruits, All Americans, and they go to San Antonio for a week and they all practice together, and then on Saturday they play in the game. Well, anyway, throughout the whole week, um, man, I was seeing some like very high quality photos of him. Obviously, high quality photos are much easier to use. So I was like, man, I gotta make him a lot of stuff, like put that out there, see how that does, see what it does. So that whole week I was making, um, graphics of him in the practice, and I started noticing, hey, look, you got the number 2 receiver in the country following you. Got the number 1 athlete in the country committed to Florida State following you. I saw that, and I was like, man, not only am I, kind of rubbing elbows with Darius Geis, but with him being at this game, all these other players are seeing it. They're following me, and they're wanting one too. And going back to what I said, being a big football fan, like I wanted to, connect with as many of these guys as possible. Not only just for my love for the game, but man, a lot of them I was able to, ask, tips and questions about because I play quarterback. So I was able to not only like provide them something with a nice little graphic, but in return, I got kind of coached up per se by some players of the likes of Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, the late Dwayne Haskins, Shea
May he
Patterson, man,
rest in peace.
for sure, for sure. It was, looking back at it, those are the things that, really stand out to me. And overall, it was just, a blessing to be able to rub elbows with those guys at such a young age and, just be able to connect with a lot of people. And it's, I say it all the time, it's a blessing to kind of be in the position I am today. And I obviously give all the glory to God, but, those early times definitely stood out to me.
And when I first started seeing your graphics, I was coming up and was just like, hey, this guy does a good job. And the one that really stood out to me, that really just like, who is this Hayes Fawcett guy? Was Travis Hunter. Because everybody knew him. Everybody thought he was going to Florida State. On commitment day, he decided to flip his commitment from Florida State to the Jackson State University to, go down there with Deion Sanders and I seen that graphic, and that's when me personally is when I really feel like it just took off from there. I mean, because then you start seeing players just DMing you, just just trying to get you to do their graphics. So, and I have a lot of players nowadays, man. With what I do, they'll say, "Hey, man, I'm trying to get a graphic made. Can you hit up Hayes Fawcett for me?" So just being able to see the work that you put in. I know I wasn't there from the beginning, but from that point on, and seeing out, man, I think you do a hell of a job. And I know it's a very, very busy job. And I'm pretty sure when you first got started, you wasn't really making any funds. You was just doing it for the love of it, right?
100%, bro. 100%. That's really kind of a thing that I believe. Like looking back on it, if I would have, tried to get every player to pay me, it wouldn't have been as like genuine, and kind of the love for it wouldn't have really been there if I was just looking to collect money. That's not what it was about for me. I was trying to provide, players, a unique, uh, way to announce their top schools commitment, etc., for one of the biggest announcements of their lives, honestly. And you know, it's I'm very glad I did it, I guess, the right way, and I'm glad I was able to start at the age that I did because I started, like I said, 13, 14, maybe 12 years old, I don't know, around that time frame. So I didn't really have to make money, which was
Right.
a blessing. um
Right.
but yeah, I really believe doing it the way I did, not asking for money, just doing it for the love of the game, really not only meant a lot to me, but I think the players recognize that genuineness from me.
So, and I know after a while, you put the work in, and now you're successful in your field. At what point did On3 reach out to you and say, "Hey, man, we want you to be our graphic guy. We want you to keep producing content for transfers, commitments, decommitments, and so forth." So, how did that opportunity come about?
Man, so obviously, like we talked about, I spent 5, 6 years, just doing it for free, just being as consistent as possible, just doing it for the love of the game, like we say, right? So anyway, I got to my freshman year of college. I remember I was sitting in my dorm. I had just finished, making a graphic for, I think it was Will Johnson. I think I put out his top 10. And I get a text, on my phone from a number that I didn't recognize, basically saying like, "Hey, Hayes, I really like your work. Would love to connect with you. Uh, have an opportunity for you," something along those lines. And that text message came from Shannon Terry, who is really the godfather of the whole recruiting industry. He created Rivals, created 247, created On3. Um, and yeah, man, I mean, getting that text, really meant a lot to me. Being able to to be able to see that people of that caliber, recognize what I did, recognize my hard work, the consistency, and then eventually honestly taking a chance on a 18, 19-year-old kid, freshman in college, to offer him a full-time job. That was a big deal, and man, like I said, it's a blessing for sure.
So is it hard separating, your job from your personal life? Is it hard?
Man, that's probably one of the things I honestly struggle with a lot, just because with in this field, you really have to be all in. Like
Definitely.
you can't be 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out. Like it's especially in the breaking news side of things. Like
Right.
you always gotta be ready. You always gotta be expecting something. Um, so over time, I've definitely gotten a lot better at it. Because man, I used to just be straight glued to my phone 24/7, have my computer with me 24/7. Obviously, I still have to bring my computer with me everywhere, and have my phone with me all the time, and be able to you know answer and check all the DMs and all that good stuff. But to the point that it was a few years ago, where I was just nonstop, kind of wasting some time that I didn't really need to.
Right.
I feel like that I've gotten a lot better in that regard. But yeah, no, definitely, it's pretty tough to balance that. But that's one of the things I'm continuing to work on every day to get better at.
So if you had to give me your top five graphics that you've ever made, and I know it's probably a pretty hard question because you've probably made a gazillion graphics. You had to give me your top five, and I think I pretty much know one already as it is because you talk about this all the time. But if you had to give me your top five, what would it be?
Man, that's tough for sure because, like you said, I've made thousands of graphics, man. And, you know, when it comes to trying to make them like really, really, really good, really detailed, a lot of times I try to go like really all out for those top guys, like the 5-star recruits, because those 5-star recruits, a lot of the people know who they are. They're following those recruitments very closely. Like those are the ones that the fans are going to interact with the most. That's just the ones that people in general are going to see the most. So to answer your question, a few of them that come to mind, um, I would say, this is, this one, Ryan Williams to Alabama.
Yeah, for sure.
We had the kind of the Hollywood vibes with his nickname,
Yeah,
had the Hollywood star. And obviously that was at a time when, Nick Saban had retired, right? Ryan decommits that day. And then
right.
the next couple of weeks, you see guys like Caleb Downs, Caden Proctor, uh, Trey Amos, guys like that enter the portal. So like you essentially lost your whole entire
For
2025 class.
definitely,
Every
definitely.
player decommitted. So like
Right.
at that time, like the Alabama kind of fan base was like on fire. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
we
Like
were in
everybody
like the
was
Alabama
freaking
fans were in.
out.
Yeah, they were in shambles. They didn't know what was. They didn't know what was gonna happen next. And so it was kind of very suspenseful, seeing that whole transition from Nick Saban to Caitlin DeBoer because you started seeing players just leaving and leaving. I'm like, oh my god, I'm over here biting my fingers like, oh boy, here we go. What's next? So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. I mean, bro, the Alabama fan base was definitely on the edge for the moment Nick Saban retired to a certain point. And there had been just straight kind of bad news, you know what I'm saying, for a couple weeks straight. And then I remember the exact day. It was the day Alabama played at Auburn in basketball. Right before the game, that news like I break the news that Ryan Williams is going to be committing to Alabama with that iconic edit that we just talked about.
Right.
And I'll never forget. Obviously, the internet's going crazy. Like first huge news, in the DeBoer era, I guess you could say. And
Right.
then, this is kind of another funny story in itself. He had another official visit planned to go to Auburn, and I'm telling you, like 2 seconds after the game ended, we put out the news that Ryan Williams would be canceling his official visit to Auburn, and he would be, sticking with Alabama. So that was definitely, one of those recruiting stories that you remember for a long time. But, going back to the original question, um, 4 other graphics that I really liked that stood out to me was one, I liked the Colin Simmons to Texas graphic. That was a
Mm-hmm.
very detailed piece, man. A lot of people don't really know about this, but we got on Discord together and I like kind of shared my screen and he told me like what he liked and some details he wanted, and we made that a really nice piece. Um, really like the Dylan Stewart to South Carolina graphic. I know a lot of these are recent, but that's when I kind of started to feel like I've gotten kind of better at making the graphics. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, with Dylan Stewart, that was another creative one. Obviously he was freshman All American this year, one of the best defensive players, not only in the SEC but in the country. And
Right.
with him, we made a nice little piece. They have this place in South Carolina that anytime they bring in a big visitor, they'll like put on the thing like "We want Dylan Stewart" or whatever, kind of
Right.
like the movie sign. Well,
Right.
I ended up editing it and putting like "Welcome Home, Dylan Stewart," and like did half his high school jersey, half South Carolina jersey. So that was a really nice touch. I really liked that one. Um, Man, honestly, and we've talked about this too before. I like any Oregon graphic, bro, because those colors pop, man. I mean, you know how it is with
Oh,
those
the
jerseys.
Corey and Moore. Yeah, the Corey and Moore. That, yeah, for sure.
The Corey and Moore one definitely stands out to me. Like I said, the colors, the detail put into that. That's another crazy story. Um, and one more that I have to say that I really liked. Uh, man,
This
I
one gets
really
tough.
like the Bryce Underwood to both LSU and Michigan. Again, that's another crazy story. Um, but yeah, it was awesome being able to be able to make those really nice pieces for all of those guys, and those are the ones that those fan bases look back on and remember, because obviously all those guys that I just named are big time players in those respective programs, and a commitment's going to stand out to everybody when a player of those calibers announce their commitment to go to that school.
For sure, for sure. What would be your end goal with what you're doing? Do you eventually want to branch out and do your own thing, or would you want to continue working for On3?
Man, that's a great question, and it's not really something I've thought about a lot. Um,
Mm,
I definitely am one to follow God's plan and believe in what He has planned for me. I like to control what I can control, and that's staying consistent, working hard, being a good person, being genuine, trying to help as many people as possible. And I feel like if I keep working hard and doing all the right things, and you know, hopefully I can be in a position one day to just continue to grow and be better in the field overall. That's really my main goal. I want to be the best I can be, and just continue to grow, man.
So if you had to give, any advice to the younger generation, what advice would you give them?
Man, that's a great question. And I'm gonna relate this answer kind of to the way I guess I would have talked to myself back in the day. And that would be, if you're gonna do something, one, you need to make sure you love it. Two, like, money's good and all, and I know like you need money to survive, but don't commit to something just because you want the bag. Like, you gotta look, like, you have to genuinely love what you're doing. That way, you can really put you know 100% effort into what you're doing, with not money always in the back of your mind. Now, again, I'm not saying money's bad at all, but you just really need to love what you're going to do. And that's one of the things that's going to kind of be set the foundation of the next point I'm going to go to, and that's being a hard worker and staying consistent. If you truly love what you're doing, you're going to work hard at it, and you're going to have the discipline to stay consistent in that field. Like, I mean, how it is. Like, if you don't like something, you might not always have the motivation and discipline to, you know, keep going forward every day, even if it may be inconvenient, if it might be hard. But if you love what you're doing, you're gonna really do whatever it takes to, you know, I guess get whatever you want to be. So those are really the main things, man. Love what you're doing, work hard, be consistent, and just be a good person, man, for real.
All right, last question. Who do you got winning the Natty in basketball?
And it's a great question. I mean, you got Duke, Auburn, Florida, and Houston. Four number one seeds for the first time since 2008, I believe. Shout out to you for picking that in your bracket. I saw the
Yes,
Snapchat story.
sir. Yes, sir.
Man, but bro, I'll say this. Watching Duke against Alabama
and
That dude, they are just too good.
and this is the thing, Case. It sucks for Alabama. For 2 consecutive seasons, they ran up against the best team in basketball. Because the year before, they ran up against a two-time. They ran up against the defending champion in UConn, and then this year they ran up against Player of the Year. I don't care what anyone says. Cooper Flag. No disrespect to Janai Broom, but if Cooper Flag did not exist, Janai Broom would be the Player of the Year. But Cooper Flag and the Duke Blue Devils are absolutely just great. Dude, I did my research, right, Hayes? Their whole starting five has an average of 6'8". That is insane.
I'm
And I
telling you,
mean,
bro.
you know me, I'm a diehard Bama fan, but I had already kind of known going into it that's where Bama season was gonna end, unfortunately. And in my bracket, I have Houston winning. I personally think the winner of the Houston and Duke game will go on to win a national championship. I mean, I think Auburn loses to Florida. Walter Clayton he's unreal.
Dude,
I think Florida beats Auburn. And I'm gonna switch up my bracket a little bit. I think the Duke Blue Devils, led by Cooper Flag, gets it done against Houston, and I think Duke beats Florida to win the champion. And I think John Shire, if I'm not mistaken,
yep.
he will become the first coach to win a national championship at the school that he played at, be an assistant on a team that he played at, and win a national championship as the head coach of the same team that he played and was an assistant at. So I got the Duke Blue Devils cutting down the nets.
Man, big time, bro. I mean, like we said, first Final Four with all number one season since 2008.
That's
I really think,
crazy.
next Saturday, it's going to be some good games to watch. We're getting top tier basketball, right? I mean, there's really nothing better than that. But I'm with you, bro. I think Duke wins it all. Man, like you said, the average height of 6'8", and with Cooper Flag's a great player, right? But obviously, he's not a one man show. And
Not at
that
all.
team, bro, so efficient. Like you cannot really go on a run
A
on them.
bunch of dogs. A bunch of dogs,
You can't
man.
you can't go on a run, bro. It seems like every time Alabama started kind of like creeping back in it, they would just go on another run. And I like probably like the 9 minute mark in the second half. I was like, yeah,
This
there's
is
nothing you
over.
can do here.
Yeah, because Bama kept getting within 9, and just couldn't do anything with the Duke Blue Devils. But I see we're both on the same page here. We both have Duke winning the national championship, cutting down the nets, and John Shire, making some history for his own self, and Cooper Flag potentially winning Player of the Year, regardless if they win it or not. But hey, that's all the time that we have today. Again, I appreciate Hayes Fawcett for joining the pod. It was an amazing pod, man. Again, thank you for joining, and hopefully you keep doing your thing or whatever you're doing, man. We are out.
For sure, bro. Likewise. Hope to be back soon too.
Yes, sir.